had the most fun with this book. Attached at the Hip is the third standalone book by Christine Riccio. It was so funny. I feel like that is the first adjective that comes to mind for me because I had just such a fantastic time reading this. Attached at the Hip is about basically a yoga influencer. Her sister is basically like running the business, and she tells our main character Orie that she can't do anything by herself, which prompts her to send in an application for Survivor, which is something the two girls have talked about their entire lives, wanting to go on Survivor. Turns out she ends up on a Survivor spin-off show, which is basically Survivor / Bachelor in Paradise. And during each section of the show, you are physically attached to someone else by like a rope, and you can only stand 4 feet away from each other. And it's so excellent. Like, if that premise sounds at all interesting to you, the book is just so fun. Like, it takes that idea and runs with it. Orie ends up attached to a couple different people, including her high school crush, a very attractive parkour athlete. It is excellent. I want to talk about all the details, so if you have not read Attached at the Hip, it is now your time to exit. Goodbye. You have been voted off the island. Please read it and come back so we can discuss. Okay, I have many a note. At the beginning of the story, our main character Orie and her twin sister Lark are running a big acro-yoga Instagram account. Their relationship sort of comes to a head because Lark is telling Orie, like, I do everything for the business except your part of the acro-yoga. Like, she does all of the posting, the editing, all of this stuff that is really, really time consuming. And apparently Orie doesn't help with any of it. And I was like, girl. She also brings up that Orie really can't do anything by herself. Her entire life she's had a twin sister to be there for her, so that already makes her like kind of a package deal for a lot of things. And then on top of that, she has been with her middle school crush boyfriend for, I mean, over half of her life at this point. For like 10 years. They got together really, really young, and they've just stayed together for that entire time. And she's like, between me and your boyfriend, like, you've never done anything by yourself. And this kind of prompts Orie to apply for Survivor on a whim. She gets casted, and she's shocked at this. I was not. I was like, girl, you've got several 100,000 followers. That's not gonna go ignored by the production cast. So she accepts to go on the show without reading the fine print, which comes up so many times. They're like, did you not read the contract? But she decides to go, and the stipulation of going onto the show is that she has to go in single. And so she ends up breaking up with her boyfriend of like 10 years right before she leaves. Now here's the thing, is that she didn't really like the boyfriend. She was just comfortable. And she said multiple times, she's like, I'm not super attracted to the guy anymore. And it turned out that her boyfriend had been like kind of talking to another girl and stuff, and so it was just like kind of a mess. And so she breaks up with him. Obviously, even though she did the breaking up, like, she's gutted. Like, this is a 10-year relationship, and she thought they were gonna get married and everything. And so now she's on her way to this island, just completely emotionally broken, which is a great way to start this show. Because she goes in and she finds out that it's not Survivor, it is Attached at the Hip, which is going to be an offshoot of Survivor with a romantic twist. She lands on this island and realizes that she's attached to Remy. Remy is her high school crush, who she kind of always liked, even though she was dating Wes. And it is chaotic. It's so funny. She is like having a hard time even talking to this guy. And like, she has the first thought that would also be my first thought, which is like, oh my gosh, we're attached for the next several days. How is a bathroom break gonna work? One of my favorite lines, I'm going to die of constipation and then rise again to die of embarrassment. And like, this whole time, obviously she really likes this guy, just like, at least from a very not knowing him yet perspective, because she's had this crush on him for so long. And she's like, there's no way that this is like random. They must have found out. She's like, I don't know how anybody found out unless they talked to Lark. And there's like a chance that Lark didn't even know, because she really never talked about it because she had a boyfriend. So this is just like, it's just hilarious. They named their alliance AP Chemistry because like that was the class they had together. She finds out that Remy likes storytelling and he's into film and stuff like that, and she's like, he can read, I'm gonna plan our wedding now. Now, we head into our first night, there's rain, we find a cave, and we're having a little heart-to-heart moment. And Remy says that he is there to play the game because his father gambled away his sister's college fund. Now, right before Orie left for the show, she found out that her dad was an addict and he was going to rehab. This is something he's hidden from her entire life. Orie thinks that there's a good chance that they got paired because of that, and she's like, how on earth did the producers find out about her dad's addiction? They fall into a showmance so fast. Remy just seems like perfect and so fun, and I was like, knowing the end of the book, I was falling for this so incredibly hard. And I know how books work. I was like, we're gonna get paired to somebody else, somebody better. And I didn't want it to happen. We go to the next, they have to do challenges and stuff, and someone at the end of the challenges, somebody gets voted off the island, normal survivor rules, and then someone goes to exile when they're not paired. And so Orie makes it through the challenge and the voting situation and ends up getting paired with Kennedy. Kennedy is like a young 18-year-old parkour star. She's very competitive. She was on track to become valedictorian until she left her senior year to come play this game. She's reaching the top of the parkour world. Like, she's just really an overachiever. And I really liked the way she described Orie was so funny. They go into these confessionals because it's a reality TV show, and Kennedy's like, Orie's like a cross between a butterfly and a golden retriever. And she knows that Orie likes Remy. Like, she really does read Orie like a book. Like, I think Orie also wears her heart on her sleeve, obviously, and so it's really easy for Kennedy to pick up on this type of stuff. Because of this, and the way she was sort of assessing Orie, I was like, I don't know if I trust Kennedy. For the first few pages of them being together, I was like, this girl is bad news. And I think it's just because she is such a fierce competitor, and Orie doesn't have that sort of, it's not drive, but it's a sort of competitiveness that has an edge to it. And Orie does not have that. They go to the next competition round and they lose to Osprey again. Osprey is a very attractive parkour athlete who is really, really good at puzzles. Orie prides herself on her ability to do puzzles. And so being beat twice by this guy, it's like obviously just like a little bit of tension between them that was just delicious. And then he picks her. And Orie was like, what? Oh my gosh. Okay, so when Orie was doing her entrance interview, they were like, yeah, everybody has really unique names. Like, what do you want to be called? Are you going to be called Orie? She's like, actually, I want to be called Piccadilly. Like the tube stop in London. It was so funny. And she tried so many times to make it happen, especially when she moved to Osprey. She was like, okay, he has no past knowledge of me. I'm going to have him call me Piccadilly. And he doesn't. He calls her tube stop. It's so funny. We find out that Kennedy has lied to us. Osprey is basically the top of the parkour world, and Kennedy is gunning for him. But when she was talking to Orie, Kennedy said that she knew Osprey through the cheer world. And Osprey's like, no, we're competitors in parkour. And so I was like, why did Kennedy tell us that? Probably just because she knows that being a parkour athlete would place a target on her back, because that level of athleticism could take her very far in the game. And I mean, I was resistant at first, obviously, because I really liked Remy, but Osprey was just wonderful. The tension was just incredible between them. I loved it when they went on their coconut expedition. The way he sort of pushed her to go further. He believed in her more than she believed in herself. And we know that there's a good chance that the producers had matched them as a pair, because part of the show was that all of these people came in with 3 potential matches on the show that they might be good with. And so with there only being 10, there's a good chance that one of Orie's potential matches is Osprey. We get confirmation basically of that theory as they start talking, because Osprey's parents own a bookstore, which one of Orie's biggest loves is book to movie adaptations. There's a Divergent mention, John Green mention, Legend Trilogy mention. I was fangirling right alongside those two. It was so funny, but a little bit real. When Orie was talking about the fact she's like, I'm 23, I'm practically edging on elderly. And it's so funny because sometimes it does feel like that after you come out of college, where you're like, oh, I'm not in school anymore, I'm just old. And her saying it out loud and them talking about it, it was just so funny. And I think part of it was because she had just come from being with Kennedy, who's 18. And she was like, I just feel so old compared to her. My notes say street lamp mention. So a while back, Christine was doing a video and she was talking about how in her first book, she added a street lamp, and there was a reason she added it. It was an inside joke type of thing. And she was like, I'm gonna add a street lamp into every book that I ever write. And I haven't finished reading Better Together yet, but I'm sure it's in there. And I kind of love that. There were like so many little mentions to, I feel like, the people who have followed her for a really long time, that I could kind of like trace back little things from videos I've watched over the years, which was really fun. That's something that I really love in John and Hank Green's books too. Turns out Osprey is afraid of the ocean. He's like, my entire life, like, I have really faced my fears after coming back from this injury that almost took him out of parkour. And he's done a lot of stuff since then, and he's like, the one thing left is the ocean. And Orie's like, is that why you stink? Because you smell horrible. So the next morning, they head into the ocean, and she's like, you must bathe. And so she helps him, and it's very sweet. And the whole time she's like, I'm not noticing his arm muscles or his torso muscles or anything like that. And she's like bathing him, and then he sort of like bathes her. And it was like just a super close moment between the two of them, and I was like, kiss, 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 kiss. They didn't, but... The emotions were there, and I was like, oh, the connection, the connection. At this point, having hung out with Osprey, I was like, I don't know how we're gonna get rid of Remy, but like, it has to happen. Oh yeah, in my notes, Remy who? There was an element of fear factor. If you ever watched, I feel like around the time when we were still like in kind of the early days of Survivor, there was also a show called Fear Factor. And I feel like that came into play in this book. Because I have not watched enough Survivor to know if there were eating challenges or I suppressed the memory, because I really hate eating challenges. And we had one of those, and there was like 3 courses, which calling them courses. Anyways, Orie's there, and they're all having to, whoever eats all of their stuff first is like, makes it to the next round. You have to beat everybody else, but like if somebody doesn't finish their food, they're basically automatically up for elimination. Orie opens her tray, and there is a dead cockroach that she has to eat. And like the description of the cockroach was disgusting because there's like green slime in it. It reminded me of that scene from like The Lion King where Timon and Pumbaa are eating like slugs. It was, oh, so gross. And the reason I felt like it was like Fear Factor was because it also simultaneously reminded me of this one episode of Fear Factor that I cannot erase from my memory, where they had to eat cow brains. And I was like, Orie, girl, we're going home, because there's no way I'd be doing that. And she manages to eat the cockroach, and like Kennedy's over there like screaming at her to keep doing it because they're in an alliance as well. When they open it up and the next course is a tarantula, I was like, we shouldn't have even tried to eat the cockroach because there's no way we're eating a tarantula right now. Like absolutely no way. I could not, I was cringing reading this part because I cannot like believe it. Orie then goes off on like a complete side tangent. Something she does is just like kind of babble a little bit, and it was so funny because she was like, yeah, you know, I can't eat a tarantula because if you eat a tarantula, it ends up cursing your family, and then you're gonna have to name your daughter Tarantula. The main host, Jamie, is like, Orie, are you good? Luckily, Remy comes up and eats her tarantula, which was very noble of him, not gonna lie. I don't think I would ever do that for another person, just to keep him in a game show. But in doing this, Remy has really shown his hand that he and Orie are in an alliance. And so when we get to voting, we find out that a lot of people are trying to get Orie out. It's early enough in the game that they're, you know, they can vote out the weakest link, which Orie is kind of looking like that, especially after this challenge. And on top of that, Remy is a big threat, and so they're trying to hurt him by taking out his alliance member. Luckily, we make it through voting. It's kind of a mess. The whole thing, watching Survivor, like normally, I feel this as well. It's just, it always makes me so anxious to watch people make alliances with multiple people because you can't always vote with everyone, and Orie really does struggle with that. She's like, I don't know if I should vote with Kennedy. I don't know if I should vote with Remy, you know, my main alliance. Like, what do I do about this? She ends up voting with Remy instead of Kennedy, and it doesn't fully backfire necessarily, but it kind of does put us on the rocks with different people. And so we head into the next choosing ceremony, and the thing about the show is that you cannot pick the same person back to back, which is why Remy and Orie could not have been together in the last section. But he's free to pick her again. And so when he picks Kennedy, it like really hurts her, and she doesn't understand why, and she ends up going to exile. So that's the one person who is not in a couple but didn't get voted out. And so she's on the beach by herself, and she's just like crying, and I was like, I would be crying as well, because she has to survive 3 days by herself. And again, like remember at the beginning of the book, her sister's like, you don't do anything by yourself. And so now she's like, well, I'm stuck here by myself. And she has her confessional time, and so she does like take some time to process and realize Remy probably chose Kennedy because they need to expand their alliance. They can't afford for it to just be them two, and he's already shown his cards. And so if he picked her then, like, it would just be kind of like a confirmation of like, they're a power couple. And one thing in Survivor is that you don't want a power couple. You have to vote one of them out, or else like they get to the end. Orie manages to like complete her one person task and really kind of has a moment to come into her own. She does end up finding Kennedy and Remy though. About halfway through the game, we have a hurricane. Everybody has to load up and go back to like a hotel on the mainland to wait it out. And while we're there, yay indoor plumbing, first of all. Second of all, while she's on the way to the bathroom, Orie overhears a couple producers talking about Remy. Turns out he doesn't have a sister. He said he was playing this whole game for his sister to afford to go to college. He only has an older brother. He says that he was living in LA, and she's overhearing these producers being like, he lives in Montana, like, how did we vet this guy? Like, how did this get through? And I was honestly shocked. Personally, very happy about this development because I was like, oh good, let's get rid of Remy. Like, I just want to be with Osprey. But this is like really hard for Orie because she has to go on a date with Remy now. And she's like, I can't, she first of all doesn't know if it's even allowed that she heard that. She's like, if I tell him this, if I tell him that I heard this, do I get kicked off the show immediately? Because is that not allowed? And then she's like, maybe this was like a producer plan. Her wheels are turning. She's like, maybe this is a lie. And she starts to ask her other cast members, like kind of as subtly as she can, like, did you hear anything weird while we were in the hotel? And nobody had. And she's like, great. It was definitely true stuff that I overheard then. They go on their date and it's really like confusing for Orie because she's like, this is the guy that I really like and I think I'm falling in love with. And she's kind of starting to grill him a little bit with different questions and he shoots back answers very quickly and he does it really well. And she's like, there's no way, like how would he think on the spot like that? Turns out he just had this all planned way in advance. But one thing that really tips her off is that they talked about movies a lot. And she's like, your favorite movie is Iron Man? He said, yes. And then she asked who the director was. And Remy didn't know. And she's like, that's suspicious because he claims to work in film. He claimed that he was an intern, like on a movie set. He should know his favorite director. And then she says the name of another director, like a comedy director. And he was like, oh yeah, that's it. And she was like, definitely not it. And so like all the red flags are raising at this point. And Orie's like, you know what's really hard about this game is that you can't fact check anything. You don't have access to the internet. You don't have access to other people. And you can't really even speak candidly with other people all the time. So it is a lifesaver when we have family day. So this is like a normal part of Survivor where a family member comes in. In this case, they're competing with like a challenge. And then if you win the challenge, you get more time with your loved one. And so there's two winners and Orie and Osprey both win. And so we get to see Osprey hang out with his sister and just see him more relaxed. And it's wonderful and lovely. And then we get to spend time with Lark, which was really good for Orie. She really, really needed it. And she kind of like debriefs her on everything and they turn off their mic packs so she can kind of like give her the scoop on Remy and stuff like that. We get to spend the day with Lark and she was like asking, she's like, how did you know to put Remy here? And like, did they call you? And she's like, yeah, we've been in touch and stuff like that with the directors. And it was like a really just fun time to see them back together again. They teach Osprey and his sister some of their acro-yoga moves. It's very cute. We get back and Osprey picks Orie, which means that Remy is stuck with Priya and Kennedy, who are like in love. And then there's Remy. We find out that Priya gets really hurt, like trips into the fire, broken ribs, second-degree burns, hurt. She is eliminated from the game. Kennedy is like, you pushed Priya into the fire to Remy. Like she hates his guts. And Orie like feels like she can't show her hand. Like she can't get on Remy's bad side. He could turn and vote her out in a second. And so she like kind of tries to stay this neutral ground between them until the next challenge, which is basically how well do you know your castmates? They have to go through these little challenges and answer questions. And like the more they know about their castmates, the better they do. During this time, Orie thinks she finds out that Remy has been lying about his birthday of all things. She's born December 7th. Remy said he's December 8th and that his sister, who doesn't exist, is born December 9th. And so when it comes to like who's older, like who's the oldest person on the cast, Orie's like, oh, it's me. And then she gets it wrong and she's like, well, who is it? And then she's like, Remy must have been lying about his age. And she's like, well, okay, that might confirm the fact that he's been lying about other stuff because she's kind of like still in this, is he actually lying mindset? And we came so close. Osprey, Kennedy, and Orie are kind of all on the same side because they're like, we know Remy's a liar. And then after that, she wasn't exactly sure what she was going to do, but now she's like, let's just vote Remy out. Like clearly he's had to be lying about something. And he ends up winning immunity in this challenge in like the final seconds. So Kennedy's sent home and then it's just the three of them on the beach. And, you know, Osprey's a good guy. Like, he really does give Remy, I don't know if it's the benefit of the doubt, but it's just like, he's not a jerk to him by any means. And so by the end of their time together, both Osprey and Orie are both like, is Remy really lying? Like, he's kind of been a little territorial about Orie, like pulling her into his lap and stuff like that. And like, during their Truth or Dare game, he asked if they kissed and was like really weird about it, and they hadn't. They almost did. But they're still like, okay, maybe Remy's not a bad guy. Like, maybe there's just like some misunderstanding happening here. And then they're about to head into like this final 3 challenge. Beforehand, Lark had given Orie a letter from their dad who's in rehab, and she reads the letter, and it's very sweet, it's very heartfelt, and like how bad he feels. And he did, like, he came into her room like before she left for the show, and he was very drunk and wanted money and like stole it from her, and like had during the night like put his hand over her mouth and like really scared. She thought she was gonna get killed. And so he feels horrible about that. It took him a long time to remember. She's kind of just glad that he doesn't hate her. She felt like she left before they could really, I don't know if it's remedy the situation that she wanted or like for them to at least talk about it, but she felt like her dad was mad at her, and that's not really the case in this letter. Jamie, the head executive person, says that we have a Hunger Games style, and Jamie, the main producer person, says that 3 people can actually win. They can split the money between all of them and walk away right then with like over $330,000 apiece. Orie and Osprey are okay with this. They're like, we should do it. And instead of go into this competition where we're gonna end up with a final 2, let's be the final 3 and win together and get a lot of money. Remy is like, Orie, I said I would split with you. We both know that $330,000 isn't enough for what we need, which first of all, yes it is. If all he wanted, his main goal was to put his sister through college, which college is very expensive, but I don't think it's like $330,000 expensive. I know she wants to go to UCLA, but still that seems like just so much. And Orie wanted to get her parents out of financial trouble. And so yes, that would be a lot of money, but $330,000 can go a long way in that situation. But because it's not a unanimous decision, Remy's like, no, we're gonna go into this challenge. They go. They're on, I think this is the challenge where they have to stand on those little poles over the water for a really long time. And Orie starts to feel really sick. It's like really, really hot outside, and Jamie keeps asking her, Orie, are you good? And like, one thing about Orie is she's gonna quote the Titanic, and so she's like, I'll never let go. Unfortunately, her body does it for her. She faints and falls off her little totem pole, and she wakes up on the sand, and we find out that the second she came crashing down, Remy gave up his chance to win the challenge, knowing that Remy was going to pick Orie to go to the final 2. He gave it up and dove after her to make sure that she was okay, because she fell into the water unconscious, which is serious. So now we're left with Osprey out of the game, and Remy and Orie are the final 2, and now they're about to spend 3 months apart while the show airs. They cannot talk to anyone. They signed an NDA. They can't even tell their family if they're in the final 2. They can't tell anybody. They can't communicate between each other. So we spend this 3 months agonizing, like, what happened with Osprey? What happened with Remy? And like trying to really like understand. And Orie does some digging during this time about Remy's past. And while the show is airing, Orie finds out that Remy didn't turn off his mic pack when she asked him to. So when she was talking about her dad's addiction and all this other stuff, the mics were on, and it airs when she thought that that was a private conversation. Her dad is okay with it. He's like, I'm fine with everything being out in the open. Like, this is part of your story too. He was very, very nice about it, which is good, but also I was like kind of surprised he wasn't like at all retaliating against it. But he is like, I guess deep down, like he's a nice guy, but they end up getting family tattoos. Very cute. And then we go to the filming of the finale. So this is like the live finale. This was such a good scene. So we go in. Orie is backstage. She's watching a lot of her castmates talking and stuff like that. And there was basically like a homecoming queen of the show. Everybody voted for Osprey to get this extra $100,000. And so he wins this consolation prize, which is really great. And then we get out there. And so Remy and Orie are gonna have to give their final speeches of why they should win. And America is voting, not just their castmates, which is like good or bad news depending on how you see it. But anyway, Remy goes and does his speech about how he loves Orie, but basically she would never have made it through the game without him. And that's why he's such a strong competitor and should be voted the winner. And some of the stuff he says, me and Orie were both getting very offended. So then Orie gets on and she's like, hey, during these last 3 months, I've gone on a fact-finding mission. I've made a film, which, by the way, during their games, Orie kind of figures out that she wants to go into film. She wants to stop the acro-yoga thing, which would work out because her sister's girlfriend is also into acro-yoga, so they could take over and she could kind of go and do her own thing and figure out what she wanted in life. And so she ended up making this documentary style film and put it on her Instagram, and then they end up showing it live on the air of her talking to Remy's mom and brother and stuff, and they're like, there's no sister, he does not live in LA, and like all this stuff. Meanwhile, during this time, Remy had gone and made a fake account for his fake sister and went and took a trip to the West Coast to like make his story look believable. And then Remy's like calling her crazy. Like the gaslighting was insane. Then we're like, okay, America vote. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna buy Remy's freaking story. They didn't. She wins by like the skin of her teeth with all of her castmates standing behind her, because they first asked the castmates like, who would you choose, just to kind of like inform the voters at home, because they obviously were privy to stuff that wasn't on the air and stuff like that. And so they all chose Orie because they all hate Remy. That was part of the reason I was like shook by them being almost 50-50 split in the vote and her actually losing for a little bit before the final push of votes. Because I mean, all those other people, like Remy wasn't everybody's favorite. People would have liked Kennedy. They would have liked Osprey. They would have wanted to vote with that person. So that was the part where I was like, I just like couldn't believe it. But also there was a thing where after she wins, Remy comes up to Orie and is like, I still got what I wanted. All of your followers came to follow me and they love me because of our showmance. And so he now has all these followers that he can make money from and stuff like that. And I was like, whatever. Because a lot of people also shipped Orie and Osprey. She has not talked to Osprey yet. Jamie comes up and is like, hey, I know you're interested in film stuff. You can go work on a film with my dad, or if you want to work on Attached at the Hip, you can do that too. And so she has these job offers, which she was like, initially she was thinking like, it's going to be impossible to get into film, which it is. And so now she has like all these opportunities to move to LA and like do this thing. Luckily, Kennedy forgave her, so we're all good over there. And so she goes to find Osprey. He's like kind of hurt because she went all in on someone else after he went all in on her. But luckily they kind of talk it out and they have their cute moment. They go back home and Osprey is like we won't work out, like the long distance thing is just not gonna work. He's like, I'm trying not to get my hopes up, because he clearly really likes her and she clearly really likes him in her own Orie way. They have a couple cute scenes of them, you know, trying to talk to each other and figure it out, and just like clearly in love with each other. She eventually goes and tries to convince him to move to LA, and he kind of has a moment of shock, and she was like, that was rejection, and she like leaves. But he catches up to her and he's like, no, like I'll move to LA, because he knows that he's going to be ending his parkour career soon. He has a career-ending injury basically, and so now his job is mostly going to be social media, online stuff, which he can do from anywhere. And so now they're going to move to LA together and be adorable. Yay! I had such a great time with this book, and to be honest, I was very bamboozled by the cover, because we came in. Once we started talking to Osprey, I double-checked the cover, because I was like, it's clearly Remy on the cover. And I was like, if he's on the cover, like good chance he's going to be endgame. And so I'm glad that was not the case. Reading this made me want to go and continue reading Better Together, because I started it, but like I have not really gotten super far. So I'm excited to go and read that one. I would love to hear your thoughts. What was your favorite part of the book, and what did you think was the funniest part? Because there were so many funny things, and like the way that Orie talks is just so similar to one of my like best friends from high school. So it just made me love her so much more, and like she's hilarious. So like it was just so funny. I want to read more books like this, like the way that I would want to watch another season of Survivor. Like this would be such a fun series. I doubt that's gonna happen, but you know, food for thought, food for thought. Please like this video if you liked it. Click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Caitlin. Thanks for watching. Bye.